Our security partners have publicly questioned whether they should have their own nuclear weapon capabilities, whether they can rely on the United States nuclear umbrella. Can you comment on that? Are you concerned about that? Do you hear any of our allies and partners talking seriously about that? And how are you thinking about addressing those concerns from our allies?
I have reasonably frequent conversations with Secretary Colby, our Undersecretary for policy, and at every opportunity in mill-to-mill engagements, I reinforce our extended deterrence commitment on the part of the United States. And I've detected no change in my mill-to-mill engagements in concern for our commitment and our stated commitment with respect to that, and that includes in my discussions with Secretary Colby. And I would highlight that STRATCOM has several liaison officers from other countries at our command, and we're scheduled to add a liaison officer from France to help with those communications and enable those. And that individual is scheduled to report this summer.
Well, thank you. I'm out of time, but if I could just ask, has Secretary Colby shared your view of that situation when you had those conversations with him?
Oh, I feed back any conversations that I have with within the department appropriately, and reinforce our extended deterrence commitments. There is a conventional burden sharing element to the national defense strategy, which the department has talked about extensively, and those are part of the conversations as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Rounds, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, to both you, General Whiting, and Admiral Carroll, thank you to you and your teams for your service to our country. I'd like to begin by asking you both a specific question with regard to the many systems that your commands rely on for missile warning, space-based sensing, and nuclear command and control. Most of them depend on access to key portions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Can we talk a little bit about how critical it is to have assured access to the 3.1 to 3.45 portion of the band and the 7.4 to 8.4 band of the spectrum for the systems that SPACECOM and STRATCOM use to conduct your missions? And in particular, the need for direct access for both of you to those parts of the spectrum. General Whiting.
Senator, thank you for the question. Certainly, access to those bands that you highlighted is critical for our mission. In the 3 megahertz range that you highlighted, we have key radars there that support our space domain awareness and missile defense missions. And then in the 7 gigahertz range, we have key communications, SATCOM communications, and so we want to be able to make sure we can continue to operate. We recognize that the president has called for the United States to win the 6G race, and we support the department's efforts to find technological solutions and ways that we can share the spectrum, leverage the spectrum for our economy, but also ensure that we have it for national defense purposes.
Thank you. Admiral Carroll.
I would associate myself with the comments from General Whiting and just foot stomp the incredible importance of sustaining that access. Our missile warning, missile tracking, missile defense capabilities would be severely impacted negatively.
Okay. Thank you. And General Whiting, just to go back on this a little bit, what I'm concerned about is that both of those bands, the lower 3 and the 7 and 8 bands, they're protected from spectrum auction. But some folks remain interested in shifting additional federal users back into those bands, which would then free up that portion of the band that the federal users had been using. But it adds additional challenges within these bands that you rely on. In your professional military opinion, what would be the impact to our strategic communications, nuclear deterrence, and homeland defense missions, including Golden Dome, if the military were forced to share those bands with other federal users in a suboptimal manner?
Senator, with your caveat there about the suboptimal manner, which would assume that we don't have the full usage and protection of that bandwidth, it would be a significant detriment to our mission because the satellites we have on orbit today, we're going to rely on those for years and years, if not decades to come, and we can't shift them out of a band that might be using the bands that we just talked about, including, I would also say that's true for our ground-based radars that use those bands as well. So we have to figure out how to be able to continue to use our legacy systems that we're going to have to rely on for years to come.
Admiral Corral, do you agree?
I agree.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that Washington, D.C. is protected by radars in those bands?
Yes, Senator.
What about Hawaii?
Same.
What about Alaska?
Same.
What about the west coast of the United States?
The same.
Thank you. Admiral Corral, just a little bit of a discussion, please, on regarding the B-21 and its the growing demand for that particular product. It's coming online shortly. I'm just curious, when you were answering the question for Senator Fisher, you indicated that you agreed that 145 was an optimal number for this. Can you talk a little bit about what the determining factors were that you used in coming up with that analysis?
When you look at the required readiness and timeliness of bomber response options with respect to STRATCOM's operational plans, that drives the number of 145 in terms of the capability of the B-21. And I could expound more in a classified setting, Senator. In terms of the capability of the B-21, I would highlight that part of the big so what there is its ability to sense and maneuver in a contested electromagnetic spectrum. So yes, it's a conventional and strategic stand-in, standoff, precision strike bomber, but it's also a key enabler for the joint force in terms of electromagnetic spectrum and its capabilities in that area, along with other capabilities associated that we would have to talk in a classified setting.
Very good. Thank you. And once again, gentlemen, thank you both and your teams for your service. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I believe Senator Kane is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for your service. I have one topic really to address with each of you. First, Admiral Krell, I want to talk about the delays in the Columbia-class submarine. The